Welcome back to the class, everyone. As of recently, we've gotten some lifters in game to help our older factions, Phoenix and Ewoks, and I've been going through my roster and thinking, what other characters could we get in game that would help lift older factions, or would it just be nice to have so that we can continue growing what we've already developed in our roster? So today, we're going to be looking at the 5 lifter characters I would love to see in game. So as we mentioned in our intro, a big part of it is looking for characters either that are just not very good right now or could really use a way to revamp themselves. And the way that CG has chosen to do this for the last, honestly, year or two now is they've been bringing in a new character that will buff all of the old ones. This ends up making a nice system for them because they get to make a quick buck off the new character, and then we suddenly have 3 or 4 characters that we probably weren't using that much before that are now usable. So we're going to be going through and talking about, as you can see in front of us, the characters that are either having issues or just could use a lifter right now, at least as far as my opinion goes, but that's how all these work. So first up is going to be the Jedi Council. And it is fair, I guess, I'm a Gundai is not Jedi Council member. Eth Koth, Kit Fisto, and Plo Koon are. And gosh, these guys are terrible. Like, Plo Koon has a ship, and parts of Plo Koon's kit make him decent as a filler tune, because he has a dispel on basic, which is kind of nice. But for the most part, I'm a Gundai. Eth Koth and Kit Fisto are hot garbage. Like, at best, they're like fillers for some random Padme or Qui-Gon Jinn team. They're not actively doing anything. And I would love to see their power level be higher. I realize the game is never going to be quite lore accurate as far as our characters go. But that being said, in lore, these guys would beat like 80 characters that we have in game, and they can't beat anything. Their kits are so wildly outdated. Like, we look at Kit Fisto's leadership, 45 flat defense. So while there are a few characters we could bring in to really lift them up, the one that I'm going to be proposing is Jedi Dooku. We recently got a lot of information on Jedi Dooku with the Tales of the Jedi series that came to Disney Plus, I believe, last year, and it really highlighted and showed a lot of Dooku's downfall within the Jedi Order. But he was a Jedi Council member, and he was a really strong fighter. I think it would be great to have him come in game, and I don't know if they would have to use the Jedi Council tag entirely, but I think they could work this in a way to the point where he doesn't necessarily play well with the other good Jedi, because that's pretty much what happened, whether it be Mace or JMK out there. I really don't want him to be taking the other good Jedi. I would like for him to focus on taking these weaker ones that we currently just don't really have a home for. So Dooku is going to be the first one I'm going to suggest. Even Piell, or I believe that's how you say his name, might be another cool one, who was another Jedi that was part of the council, who died on during the Citadel, during the Clone Wars, who might be able to lift them up as well. I'm not really sure what he could do with their kits. They're really, again, other than Plo Koon, there really isn't a lot going on here. These are so basic. He would have to lift them up from the ground up, and quite honestly, they might even need to just throw in some reworks for these characters as well, just to get them off the ground, because they really don't have a whole lot to offer as is. Next up is going to be the Mandalorians, and this one is going to be a bit awkward, because if you don't have Lord Vader and you have Maul, I'm probably just going to sound like a crazy person right now. But as the end game stands, if you have Lord Vader, Maul 9 times out of 10 is going to want to play with him, unless you're really strapped for teams and you're trying to make 2 separate teams, which is definitely doable. But for the most part, a lot of the Mandalorians just don't have a home, and Bo-Katan and Canderous, they have really good kits as far as what they can do, but they need a new character that's going to be able to come in and be their leader to be able to lift them up to at least like a B or an A- team. And while I would love to eventually see a really powerful version of Din Djarin do this, I don't know if we're quite there yet as far as his story goes, because I know there's a little bit more to be told with what he's doing. But in the meantime, I think it'll be fun, and this could also lead into other things, to add in our good friend Mandalore the Preserver. For those of you who ever played the second KOTOR game, you'll know that Canderous eventually becomes Mandalore himself, where he takes the title of Mandalore, where he is leading all of his people. This would allow them to have a leader that would not only help lead them into battle, but that would also protect them and preserve them. They could either use savior type mechanics or revives. He would be a great addition, and he could be a requirement for some other characters from KOTOR 2 that we still haven't seen. I know we had a really big burst of KOTOR 1 characters a couple of years ago, and then as of recently, we've gotten Malgus, but it'll be nice to get this one in game. And honestly, they could do another Mandalore as well. I would not be mad if we got Mandalore the Ultimate instead of him, although that is a pretty high level character. I'm not sure if they can actually bring these out as marquees. I guess we got Nihilus as a marquee character, and he was a pretty big deal. So that would be the second lifter character I would like to see. And this is where the conversation gets super awkward, because quite frankly, Jedi Knight Revan doesn't need a lifter. This team is not nearly on the same level as the like Kit Fisto one that we showed before. But in the very same vein, Darth Revan didn't need a lifter either, and he got Darth Malgus. So what I would like to see here is one of two options, and I actually do favor one of them more. But the first one would be Satele Shan. Satele was the descendant of both Jedi Knight Revan and Bastila. He was a very powerful Jedi that rivaled Malgus in a lot of senses, not just in power, but also as far as these SWGOH games go. The other character that I would actually like to see more than her, though, that doesn't see as hot of an option, no pun intended, would be Meetra Surik, or the what was her name? The Outcast, basically the main character of KOTOR 2, whereas Jedi Knight Revan was the main character of KOTOR 1. It would be very symbolic of her to be the lifter for the Old Republic Jedi, because that's really what her whole purpose in the entire universe was to come in and help Jedi Knight Revan on his mission as they continued through the lore. And it would just be nice to see this team lifted. The only thing that I really see as an issue with this team is right now in Territory Wars, Juhani is so tied to our good friend Starkiller because of how our Omicron works. It is cookie cutter, specifically made for him to work along with a dark side unaligned force user that is an Empire First Order Galactic Legend, which at Starkiller, that's pretty much your only option left. So maybe they would have to outfit her specifically for the raid where Old Republic were allowed, or maybe GAC, or both. Or I just think it's going to be very hard to to bump this team up within Territory Wars with Juhani's presence. And really, if she ever comes to the games, Satele or Meetra, they're going to have to play their cards really close to their chest and make it her specifically there for Old Republic Jedi, and to not really have any exclusions, because the way that the Jedi faction is working right now, similar to how we were talking about the Jedi Council tag earlier, there's just so many better ones that will instantly start taking the place other than Juhani or Jolee or Bastila. But that would be the third lifter character that I like to see to get those Old Republic Jedi, not necessarily good because they already are good, but up to the next level. Now, next up, I believe we need an Empire or maybe an ISB character to come to the game to help a lot of these other characters. I realize CG doesn't really need to do this because we already have Krennic and TIE Fighter Pilot, Grand Moff Tarkin. They're all already at Relics because of Galactic Legends, but quite frankly, so is Rolo and Lando and I guess everyone but Stormtrooper Han for the Sana team, and they eventually did get Sana to help lift them up. So the character that I think could be really fun and really great to help lift them up would be Admiral Yularen. He not only was really high up in the Empire, a very powerful and influential figure, but he was also one of the people highly involved in the ISB. Not only would this be a way for them to lift up the current units like Krennic or Grand Moff Tarkin, but maybe he could specifically have an ISB tag for later on for members such as Agent Kallus or our good friend Deidre that just came out in the Andor series, and maybe even more characters that we'll be getting in the second season of Andor that'll be coming up here shortly. But he would be a very fun character to have in game, a very old character to have in game. He's been in Star Wars lore ever since A New Hope, where he got to witness Vader do some fun things in the very beginning there. And I'm not really sure as what his kit would do to be able to tie in all these characters without accidentally inviting Vader or Thrawn or Emperor Palpatine, the good Empire characters we have in game, to the table. I don't know. Again, I guess the ISB tag would be one way to do it, but at the same time, I don't know if you can pigeonhole these four exact characters in the ISB when they're not really functioning that way. Like TIE Fighter Pilot, I guess, but not really. Imperial Probe Droid, also no. Director Krennic, I guess, would work, but for the most part, yeah, the ISB tag might just not be the best way to lift those, but it would be a great way for him to come into game. And last but not least would be the Solo Scoundrels. So this is, again, kind of an awkward conversation because it feels like CG already tried to lift all the Solo Smugglers when they brought Dash into the game. They all revolved around the prepared mechanic. Dash also revolves around the prepared mechanic. The only issue is he gives it to pretty much everyone and they don't get to lose it the entire battle. So what has happened in a lot of the meta, at least in the very end game, is people are putting IG and Queel with him, as well as like L3 and Vander. L3 and Vander are actually really hard to take away from him, and making like a really good double tank, revive, decent DPS team. And Han Solo, young Lando, and Kira are pretty much getting left on the outside. Enfys Nessa's fairly plug and play and kind of going a lot of places. She really doesn't need a lifter, but we just put her on the team for funsies. So the character that I think we could bring in to lift this up that is a little bit criminal that we don't have him already, because when you look at characters from movies, he currently, I think, has the most lines outside of Jar Jar, actually, and isn't in game, and that is Tobias Beckett. A little surprised we didn't get him right when the movie first came out. He is a main, not the main character, but he's one of the main characters, and they're both flip-flopping from the good side to the bad side, kind of to a neutral spot. He would actually be a perfect character to have the neutral tag alongside our good friend Hondo. He'd be a smuggler. I'm not sure if he would even need to have the leadership per se, or if he could just come in and specifically give buffs to not prepared characters, but maybe young Han, young Lando, Kira, because he worked directly with them. And maybe they could even put in kind of like a fun backdoor thing where if all of them die, similar to Hondo, he gets super buffed, because ultimately that's what he's after. He can actually get stronger the fewer allies he has, maybe kind of a reverse thing as actually kind of a similar thing to what Cat or Fennec does, where the less allies they have, the more juice they get, because ultimately the fewer members that he has on the team, the higher his cut is going to be, and the more motivated he's going to be able to do well. So those are the 5 lifter characters I think we could genuinely use in the game. Let me know in the comments what you think out there will be another good option for maybe some characters that just don't really have a home right now. I will throw out this like honorable mention of Jar Jar Binks. I love Jar Jar Binks, but I was looking through the Galactic Republic faction trying to figure out a team that he could go in. I just don't think we're there yet. Padme is either ruling her own team or she's really good with JMK, and the only non-Jedi Galactic Republic out there that really doesn't have a home is Cup. And that's just kind of a weird team, Jar Jar and Cobb. It's kind of the meme team, actually, so maybe that can be a thing. I don't know if CG would go for that. But until the next time, thank you guys for watching. And as always, stay awesome.